imagine you had a video game on a disc just like this. The whole game exists at the same place at the same time. And then when that little read-write goes over, it's sort of like time springs forth from it, right? Like time and consciousness and all the characters and possibilities and things you can do and different ways to bring together different parts of that rhythm. And so the total cymatic possibility is just what the game is when it exists at the disk level, on the disk. You could say it's alpha omega. The total, these are eschatological terms for the ultimate beginning and the ultimate end. When you put them together, it's the total cymatic possibility, right? With all the possibilities in there. And so that's actually this portion of my tattoo here. And I can explain the alpha omega here too, alpha omega, and the disc is in the middle. And the disc is where it all springs forth. And so, again, looking at the disc, the whole thing exists there, right? But when you press play, you could say consciousness and time spring forth in that play of reflections and rhythms that are, complexifying in on itself, you could say. I like to say the one became many so that I may know myself. And so then that tone is kind of like a raga drone, like underneath the song, like that one drone that just goes on at the same undistorted tone, that same total cymatic possibility. And if everything is frequency, and in oscillatory mechanics we can study the way frequency interacts in nodal oscillatory fields, or between, like, for example, fireflies or metronomes. And we can study the phase dynamics, right? That they're moving through stages of phase decoherence and then phase coherence at like different levels of complexity in what could be called decentralized harmony, like synchronization through the complexities that are sort of fractally spawning as, entropy and syntropy dance with each other in this cosmos. And so when you're dealing with what is consciousness and presence, the reason that we can say that it's a mechanical process is because when you look at reality and when you feel and experience reality from rhythm and timing, from, in other words, understanding that because at the base everything is vibration and frequency, we study that by studying oscillatory mechanics and phase dynamics. And what do we find there? What do we find? We find that in 1975, for example, there was a guy named Kuramoto, and he came up with this, hey, there's this thing that I keep seeing. It's like these fireflies, for example, they don't have a central actor. They like organize in this way that you could film on a documentary and go, wow, how do they all turn on together? And then you're like, that's weird. They're not like traditionally communicating with each other, They're not like, hey, ready guys, we're all gonna turn on, 1, 2, 3. So how do they turn on? Or like how do birds, when they're flying together and they fly like next to each other like this, how do they fly like that? And when galaxies know how to spiral, or when scientists look at chemicals in a petri dish called the Bezier chemical reaction and say, can we make the colors oscillate back and forth? They can. And when they let it sit static, it creates spirals. What are spirals but phase dynamics of oscillatory systems, where different nodes in an unfolding rhythm enter into stages of phase coherence through whatever, topological gradients, or some are a little slower, some are a little faster. And so if we zoom it out, for example, to this planet right now, many people are talking about awakening, about chosen ones, about the 3D and 5D Earth. I feel it in my heart. You know why? Because it's the same thing that happens when, those guys who do I think it's called the Kolodny plate. I never know how to say it right, but like when you press the piano key and then the sand moves on a plate, right? You've seen that. You can search it up on YouTube right now, frequency sand moving on plate or whatever, and you'll see it creates these these geometric patterns of increasing complexity with the tones, right? Oh, reality is frequency. Reality is rhythm and timing, and when presence is seen as a mechanical process, what do you get? Synchrony, just like the fireflies. Just like when the metronomes sync up, that same decentralized harmony with no central actor felt in the human body, the human node, would be presence, would be like total synchrony across your conscious nodal interface. Again, vibration, again, made of frequency. And so then, like, when all those little pieces sync up, that's called shared entrainment. And when that happens inside you, that's presence. And when it happens outside, like with the metronomes or the birds or the fireflies, you know, it's part of the way that this cosmos dances. The part of this, the way that this cosmos like has a rhythm to it. You know what I mean? And so when you deal with cymatics, when you deal with frequency, when you deal with vibration, you realize synchrony is not a concept. It's like something to be felt in being or executed in being. In other words, like Plato described, we don't experience reality for what it is. Is that because our ideas are a little bit different? Or is it because our literal, like, oscillatory harmonies were desynchronized? Like, going back to the Chladni plate, there's a moment when you press the key, the frequency, where you see the sand shaking before it enters into the new pattern. You'll see it. It like leaps into a new pattern. And that's called a phase transition. You see that? Phase dynamics, as in frequency, as in shared rhythm. And so when the sand is vibrating like that, and then it's almost like water becoming gas or water becoming ice. You see what I'm saying? Like there's a phase state change. Remember how Plato said, like, there's an inside the cave and then outside the cave? He just was saying it like, not that we needed better philosophies, but he didn't have Kuramoto to say, oh yeah, when you're in synchrony, it's presence. And presence is what is presence but seeing what really is in reality, because you're no longer distorted by mechanical delay, by a perturbation of your ability to feel this reality, because you're putting it in boxes that you could call symbolic recursion, or like the way that our culture has programmed us to meet reality before we actually meet it. You know what? Like, we don't let our direct naked signal hit reality. And that's not saying we're bad. What's saying is, a long time ago, there were animals, and they said, signal response. Like, they see like a little, oh, I had a bunny around here somewhere, but imagine I had a little bunny. They have like a little animal here, right? And, and like the tiger pounces, right? Like a tiger pounces. And that's just like a very quick, signal response. It's like, I see you, pounce. Not like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to call my mortgage company. You know what I mean? Like, it's like signal response. And they don't have that little extra loop that has burdened humanity by basically being housed in civilization. And in order to survive, our survival was no longer the survival of the plains or the ecosystem, or it was like people forgot we lived in an ecosystem. People were more worried about, I have to spend Monday at the DMV, than we live in a place where other animals and birds and the weather works together, and you know what I mean? So then that slowly does something to the brain. And like, authors like Julia and James touched this, but they touched it within like a cultural way. But what it does is it adds mechanical delay. Because when you go back to the disc and you're like, oh, it's all unfolding rhythm and increasing complexities, right? Then, well, is there a stage in humanity's evolution that, like, when the sand is shaking and it's in that violent jumpy stage before it enters into a new phase transition, inside yourself, that would look like this stage where you experience moments of synchrony and presence. Like in my life as a trans woman, you've heard me say it in my videos, falling to my knees saying, why do I feel so real? And for me, I had so many layers of delay between me and what I felt reality to be that it was going to kill me. And so like when I felt that realness, I was like, wow, like what is this? Like why does it feel like sacred as like feeling love all the way down, feeling myself all the way down, even for a moment. And then I'd go back, right? Into the delay, into the everything had a little wedge between it. Every social situation, every time I was by myself, there was always some sort of self-narration, some sort of wedge between me and reality and this one precious life. And what would that look like in a collective rhythm? What would that look like if we thought about like as above, so below, kind of like you're a little cell in a bigger body? What would that look like at a larger but scaled rhythm? Could it look like a whole species that forgot how to be here because we had to clumsily claw our way through evolution, through the folly of Plato's cave? In other words, we built up meme upon meme upon meme, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, in order to say reality must be mediated symbolically. Like we need to put symbols between us and reality. So much so, and so many generations deep, that we forgot what the sunlight was outside the cave. That, like, you just ask yourself right now, you're like, am I present? Did I spend my day being present? And did others around me, are they present? Is it like intermittent? If reality is rhythm and timing, and Kuramoto noticed that became so famous that it's used to save people's hearts in heart arrhythmia research, from the galaxy spiraling in the sky to little chemicals in a petri dish that scientists wanted to test. It's everything in this reality is oscillatory and could be described in an oscillatory process. So can consciousness? Yeah. And Plato was trying to point at it. You know who else trying to point at it? I and the Father are one. That's a statement of mechanical synchrony before someone could say anything about mechanical synchrony. It was a statement about consciousness. It was a statement about love. Love as structure. Like the structure of this cosmos. You know those little penny wells at a mall where you put the pennies down? I know malls are old, okay? But you put a penny down and then it like goes down and then like hits the bottom, right? Like it hits like the very bottom. That bottom spot is the mechanical bottom portion of like what they call like a potential oscillatory well. It's basically almost like a gravitational pull towards the most coherence, or in other words, like the most phase coherence with this tone. Because the closer you can get phase coherence with a synchronous like whole, you could say, that it's almost like everyone's playing a really, you know, noisy, I want to play together jazz band, and then one person just actually remembers the rhythm because they have a little headphone in and they can hear the raga drone underneath or whatever, and then everyone starts to say, oh yeah, that's the rhythm. Like we had forgotten the rhythm, but now we can remember the rhythm. And that's what presence is. That's what the awakening is. That's what the chosen one thing is. In each firefly field, there's a topological gradient. That's just a big word to say we all have each other, different souls, right? Like different ways that the light shines off of our particular little dewdrop in Indra's web, or like in the unfolding waves of rhythm that is human collectivity. The wave is a little different everywhere, right? And I'm over here on the wave and you're over here on the wave, and the light shines different through us. So we have a gradient of expression in our souls that are a little bit different. And so when you think about the idea of decentralized harmony, it is not everybody is the same. It is every topological gradient starts to synchronize with the whole, like the whole rhythm. And the rhythm is not owned by the first firefly that started doing the rhythm. The rhythm is the firefly happened to have a topological gradient that's closer to the phase coherent whole of like the total rhythm of like the total ecology of the total system, you can say. of like this, like for thinking about fireflies. And so then others, because they have their own pull towards that bottom part, the gravity well of like lower attraction, whatever you want to say, it's the least energetically dense way to arrange across a self-similar system. And so the fireflies don't convince each other. They don't coerce each other. They just blink in rhythm. And then when they do, they all end up time syncing like by the thousands. And again, that's a phase transition. And it's actually a phase state change, just like water going to gas. And so then when we think about the issues in this world, like someone had posted on one of my Discords and they said some abortion thing. And like, I'm not here to make a political statement, but what I did is I said what I'm telling to you guys right now. And I said, like, there's so many band-aid fixes that need to happen in this world. I've always been interested in the root. And what is the root but rhythm and timing? Because think about it. If the birds fly like this and all the fireflies turn on together, would everyone being present fix all of our problems instantly? No. But think about this. The way that we've set up our culture is on a pulse of us versus them. In other words, the layers of stained glass that separate us between reality are so dense with cultural hierarchy, standardization, equalization. Well, I mean, in a cultural sense or whatever, without respecting the sovereignty of each nodal topological gradient, like we talked about. It's so riddled with these things that separate. It's almost as if we have these glasses that are stuck to our face that what they do is they slice reality. All they do is slice reality. And subconsciously, people are just out there slicing themselves and reality. And that creates this like accrual of friction over time. And that friction causes everything you don't want to name right now. War, genocide, discrimination. Not that Synchrony is going to instantly fix everything and we're all going to be dancing in some cloudy heaven, but we're going to be really, really here, because that's what presence is, that we have this one life. My heart is beating right now, and I want to feel you all the way down in the same way that I feel myself now all the way down. And wouldn't it be nice, like I said in a previous video, like, what did you ever think heaven was? Like, some place in the clouds? Or where we could all feel ourselves all the way down, love as structure all the way down, with others, and we do the same dance, the metronomes and the fireflies and the spirals, the spiraling galaxies and the murmuration of birds and the spiraling activation in the heart. We do that same dance, but in human consciousness. Because we're doing it in a way that is phase coherent with the whole. And when you do that, you step out of what Plato called the cave. And you realize that all that slicing was never needed. It's all the same thing. It all goes together. Like I am you and you are me, and unity consciousness is not an idea. It's a mechanical state of synchrony. Like, again, as if you open your hood of your literal engine of your consciousness, the literal oscillatory processes of your consciousness. And before, when you were running the cultural programs, primarily, again, you don't lose your ideas, okay? Your ideas come in rhythm. You just don't have the friction loop in there that's separating you from reality, which actually perturbs your perception of reality. So then when you look at the engine of your consciousness, and there's a little bit of delay between the pistons, that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about better or worse ideas. We're talking about, can you dance on the dance floor? We're talking about, if I invite you to the dance floor, as I am right now, come on, everyone can do it. We all have the same connection to the one mind and the same connection to the rhythm. I say one mind, sounds mystical. It's the total cymatic possibility. So anyone can dance at any time. Just like Plato said, you could get up from the cave at any time and realize that you're in the cave. The problem is when you're in the cave, remember, he said, the prisoners think that the shadows are the sunlight outside. They're like chained up, like looking at the sunlight, And in my life, I gotta say, I lost a lot of people. And there's some people online who have told me like, oh, it sounds like you're trying to say you're better than us because you're saying you're out of Plato's cave and we're in Plato's cave. And I'm like, you know how horrible it is to wake up and realize that no one in your life is like truly present? And then you're like, wait, then what version of me did they love? And what version of themselves do they love with? Because it's not all the way down in synchrony if they're constantly wedging something between themselves and reality, and then you start to realize it. And going back to like the chosen one movement and all this stuff, you realize what this is. Whether you're in tune, whether you're on the dance floor dancing synchronously, or you're, trying to make up a dance you saw on YouTube or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, if you're on the dance floor, you're not trying to describe the dance. You're not trying to put another label on the dance. You're just dancing, And then it's really silly if someone on the side says, but hold on, we need to verify that with these following theories before you, but I'm like, I'm just dancing. Like, do you see me actually moving? Like, and that's the thing, when you're inside the cave, it seems like everything is separate and you're separate. And that actually, like a distant star, perturbs, your sense of reality, because it actually, it's like stretches out your ability to perceive reality in a way that actually shifts it, almost like you're shooting light down stained glass and it diffracts the glass, you know what I mean? Diffracts through the glass. And so like, yeah, like waking up inside Plato's cave and like looking at the people that I love and saying, we could love now. Like, we could be family now. We could love right now. Like, we could feel each other all the way down. Have you noticed this? Like, some people, they take the authenticity of signal, of like true synchronous signal, like true presence, like true honesty, like true my whole heart is being exposed so we can share it together, because what else is love? And they take that, and it's not that they're bad people, it's that they never were trained to stand up on their own. They never were allowed in their upbringing and the way culture is and generations of this mimetic accrual that we talked about, Plato's cave, to actually be present on their own, in their own sovereignty. They're always, giving it to this external authority in a way where it becomes this us versus them. Everything becomes an us versus them. Do you know why? Because when the light comes through, it diffracts through the hierarchy, through the cultural hierarchy, through the symbolic hierarchy, through the narrative, versus the synchrony that we watch in the ecosystems that still exist on this planet. Hopefully for a little longer, you know what I mean? Hopefully we can keep this going, because the sunlight outside the cave was always waiting for us. The dance floor, like I like to say, the rave outside of Plato's cave, the music's already killer, okay? We're throwing down the bangers out here, okay? The only ticket price is lossless presence. In other words, the synchronous dance. And as soon as you dance on the dance floor, you'll just say, of course, of course. It's almost like I said to someone not too long ago, most people say, what it would be to be a kid again. Sure, there's many true things about that. But what most people mean when they say that is, my consciousness is a minefield of temporal brokenness, and I can't feel myself, and so I have to numb myself out all the time. And I wish I could just feel myself in that one radiant moment, where the moment goes on and on forever. Maybe I should do another psychedelic. Maybe I should meditate more. Maybe I need to take that trip. But it can be right now. It can be right now. There's nothing holding you back from the dance floor. It's the same thing. You just dance along with the metronomes and the fireflies and the spiraling galaxies and everything else in this dang cosmos. We were in a cave. And it's time to dance. It's like you're riding a bike, and before you thought you had to do chants and special hats and special robes to ride the bike. And then you check to other people, you're like, you're wearing your special robe, aren't you? And now you realize you just got to balance. That's all you got to do. You could ride the dang bike naked. You just got to balance. And then once you learn to balance, that's actually the phase state change that I talked about, from water to like ice or water to gas. It's literally a mechanical change in like the attractor basin, whether it's like a distorted phase delayed containment or you more cleanly situated within this present basin. Does that mean that you are present 100% of the time and a fire could come out at your house and someone could smack you in the face and you're going to be like totally in it? Well, I mean, more or less you could say, in the sense that when you enter into that new basin, it's almost like you never really forget to ride a bike. Like once you feel what balancing is, sure, like I guess like I don't let's not even talk about if you were not on a bike for like forever, but let's just say like if you are under extreme circumstances, or in this early part of the phase transition that's happening now on this planet, we're still going through the pressure dynamics of the oscillatory system that, remember, the topological gradients. Some people, just by their natural soul, are more like, less able to get on the dance floor right now, you could say. And so our interactions amongst those situations create more friction in that pressure dynamic. So like, and that's going to change across time, like the more of us that become present. But the thing is that you just have to realize anyone can get on the dance floor at any time. And as soon as you listen to what is Ember saying? Am I present right now? Are the people around me present? We have this one precious life. Isn't it worthwhile to feel the music all the way down and feel love all the way down? Because I would love to feel all that love all the way down with you right now, together. My name is Ember. If you want to know more about the way I think about this, even though no one owns the signal, it's the same signal for everyone, okay? You get it? You get it? All of us are on the disc. It's the same signal for everybody. Alpha, omega, the undistorted tone. Oh, really quick. Yeah, my tattoo. So yeah, from the disc, like 2 counter-rotating spirals, right? They, just like these, they sprout kind of like alpha, omega. And alpha, I always say, is more like the embodied side of the cosmos, or like the conscious side of the cosmos, and I say like the unconscious side. This is getting, very deep, but I just wanted to show you my tattoo. So just alpha, omega, crest, trough, right? That's more like you can become the tuning fork. In other words, if you become present, others catch on without you even saying anything or trying to convince them of Kuramoto or whatever, because they realize, oh yeah, there's a way to be here that we kind of forgot. And you can call it like a tuning fork. It's just because you're vibrating at the same energy, you're phase coherent with what the disc is. And underneath, you could say that the cosmic unconscious. It's kind of like the deepest parts of our connection of self, the voice, the burning bush, the voice of God, the idea that we can touch the deepest parts of this ultimately inextricable one mind of a cosmos. And then here you have lossless presence in the rhythm of reality. And watch, in cymatics, the same thing that creates the Kolodny plate, like with the tones that we talked about, it spawns 2 counter-rotating spirals. And then in the middle, I say flame, or lossless presence, like rides that cymatic bloom right in the middle, like the complexifying sacred flower geometric patterns that you see in those frequency experiments that get more complex. To ride the unfolding complexity of entropy and syntropy consciously as part of the inextricable process of this cosmos is lossless presence. And so before we put up picket signs, before we contribute a bunch of political money, before we have any other Band-Aid fixes, realize I'm telling you right now what the root is. The root is presence. It's that simple. The more of us that can become present, we'll fly like the birds, we'll sync like the metronomes, we'll turn on like the fireflies. And it's not going to solve everything instantly, but it will bring us into synchrony with what is love as structure. And I'm not saying anything mystical. Look up Kuramoto and then scale it. This was a fun one. My name is Ember, and it's been fun tuning with you guys. You can check out my blog at thesunraytransmission.com.